Today we discuss about Laravel blade templates. Blade templates are used to write view code in Laravel. Blade is a powerful template engine which is included with Laravel. So the blade code will be converted into the PHP code, and it will have the extension .blade.php. For example, display is the file name, view file name. Then it will have the extension called .blade.php, display.blade.php. So like this we will be creating the blade file. If I want to display some variable, or if I want to display data, so we will be using the curly braces. Within the curly braces we will be mentioning that particular variable. Double braces, $name. Blades double braces echo statements are automatically sent through PHP's HTML special chars function in order to prevent XSS attacks. And HTML entity encoding. Generally, E function is used to encode, which will provide double encode HTML entities. If I want to disable particular double encoding, so we will be using a method called without double encoding method. This can be used within the boot method of app service provider. Displaying unescaped data. Previously we have discussed curly braces statements are automatically sent through PHP's HTML special chars function in order to prevent XSS attacks. If we don't want to be escaped, then we will be using the syntax single braces, not symbol, double not symbol, and the variable name double not single brace. So like this we will be using the displaying unescaped data. Blade and JavaScript frameworks. JavaScript frameworks also use curly braces in order to indicate a given expression should be displayed in the browser. And @ symbol we will be mentioning where in order to skip that particular blade syntax by the template engine. So whenever it executes, so it will skip that particular variable @ double braces name. So it will skip that data. It will remain untouched. Rendering JSON. We will be using JSON_encode function in order to render JSON. We can also use JS from method directive in order to render the JSON data. If we are displaying JavaScript variables in a large portion of our template, then we will be using directive called @verbatim. So this is the directive with which we can display JavaScript variables in a large portion of our template. Now we discuss about blade directives. So we will be having a lot of blade directives in order to implement blade templates within Laravel. So like generally we are having control structures like if else, for each, while, switch case. So like this we will be having different control structures. So we will be using @ symbol. We will be appending @ symbol to these control structures, and we will make utilize of all these control structures within the blade directives, within the blade templates. For example, if control structure is there, we will be using at the rate of if the condition, the state at the rate of end if. So like this we will be using the at the rate of if directive. Like this we will be having different control structures directives, like for, at the rate of for, at the rate of switch, at the rate of case, at the rate of for each, for else. This is a new directive in Laravel, where we can put a condition, empty condition, at the rate of for else. So like this we will be having different directives. And also authentication directives, at the rate of auth and at the rate of guest directives are there in order to determine quickly whether it is a authenticated user or not. So like this, at the rate of auth, at the rate of guest directives are there in Laravel. And also we can mention what kind of environment it's a product. Suppose if it is a production environment, so at the rate of production, at the rate of production, so we will be using this environment directive at the rate of production. And also if we don't know any particular environment, so we will be using at the rate of env directive, at the rate of env of staging, at the rate of env of staging comma production. So like this we will be passing array to particular at the rate of env directive. So based on that we will be performing the actions. Section directives, we will be using at the rate of has a section. So suppose if navigation we are checking navigation section is there or not. So like this, at the rate of has section of navigation. So like this we will be checking sections by making use of has section directive. And also one more directive called at the rate of section missing. So like this we will be using the section missing directive in order to check navigation. Session directives, at the rate of session, at the rate of end session. So like this we will be having session directives. For example, at the rate of session of status. So like this we will be using the session directive. Switch statements, we have already discussed at the rate of switch of $I, at the rate of case of 1, first case, at the rate of break. So like this we will be using the switch statement. Loops, at the rate of for, at the rate of end for, at the rate of for each, at the rate of for else, at the rate of while. So like this we will be having control structures in Laravel. So these are the control structures directives. And also we will be having loop variable. So $loop first. For example, at the rate of for each directive is there. Within that I want to check the first value, $loop first. So like this we will be having the loop variable. And also we will be having one more variable called loop parent. So in order to access parents versions, we will be using the $loop hyphen parent. Or it's a object syntax. Hyphen greater than symbol. And also we will be having different variables like loop index, loop iteration, loop remaining, loop count, loop first, loop last, loop even, loop odd, loop depth, loop parent. So like this we will be having the different loop properties in order to access particular loop indexes within the for each directive or other loop directives. And also conditional classes and styles. So we will be using the at the rate of class directive in order to mention conditionally all these CSS and classes. And also style directive we can use in order to conditionally add inline CSS styles to an HTML element. Additional attributes. At the rate of check directive is used to indicate if a given HTML checkbox input is checked or not. So like this we will be using the @check directive. @selected, whether the particular option has been selected or not. So like this we will be using the @selected directive. @disabled directive. So like this we will be using the for example, button is disabled or not. So in order to convey that message, convey to that value, so we will be using the @disabled directive. @read-only directive, also used to indicate a particular given element should be read only or not. If it is required directive, @required directive. So if a particular input field is, if I want to mention that as a required field, then we will be using @required directive. So like this, these are the additional directives which are there in Laravel. Including subviews. If I want to include particular view and subview, so we will be using the dot operator separation. So @include shared dot errors. Like that, we will be using the subviews. And we will be having other include methods which are based on conditional, which are based on the condition, which will be making use of a conditional include statements, include methods. We can include particular views or subviews conditionally. For example, @include if, @include when, @include unless, @include first. So these are the different methods that are available apart from the include directive. So these will be used based on particular condition. So when the condition is met, so these will be included. Rendering views for collections. So we will be using @each directive in order to render a particular view for a collection. Once directive. @once directive allows us to define a portion of the template that will only be evaluated once per rendering cycle. So if we are including some script, JavaScript code, so we want to include only once, so then we will be using this once directive, @once directive in Laravel. And this once directive is often used in conjunction with the push or prepend directives. Mostly push, within the push we will be mentioning the script code. @once, @push of scripts, within that we will be mentioning the script code, JavaScript code. Or @push once scripts, and within that we will be mentioning the JavaScript code. So like this we will be using the @once directive along with the @push or @push once. Raw PHP. So we will be using PHP directive in order to execute PHP code @PHP tag. So this directive is used to execute a particular PHP code. If I want to include, if we want to type hint particular model, so then we will be using use directive. And also we can provide alias to this use directive as a second parameter. So whenever we are type hinting, we can also provide alias. For example, @use app models flight, comma second parameter flight model. So like this we will be using the @use directive in order to type hint particular model. Comments. So blades also allows us to define comments in our views. So blade comments are not included in HTML written by our application. So generally double braces will be used for this. Components. Components and slots provide similar functionality like sections, layouts, and includes. So mostly we will create a component by making use of PHP artisan command called PHP artisan make component alert. PHP artisan make component alert. So this is the command used to create a component in Laravel. So if I want to create a component within the subfolder, within the folder, then we will be using the command called PHP artisan make component forms/input. So like this we will be using the artisan commands. When we use PHP artisan make component alert command, so automatically it will create a component within the directory called app view components directory. And parallelly and at the same time it will create a view file, corresponding view file within resources/views/components. So within that it will create a component file. So like this we will be using the artisan commands in order to create a component in Laravel. Manually registering package components. So before that we will be discussing one more command called PHP artisan make component forms.input --view. If we would like to create an anonymous component, then we will be using the -view flag when invoking a make component command. So in order to create a class component, we will be using the command called PHP artisan make component forms/input. PHP artisan make component capital letter of forms/capital letter of input. So like this we will be creating the class component. There are mainly two types of components, class components and anonymous components. So the above statement is used to create a class component like PHP artisan make component forms/input. And if we want to create any anonymous component, we will be making use of PHP artisan make component forms.input -view. So like this we will be using the artisan command in order to create an anonymous component. So manually registering package components. So when writing components for our own application, components are automatically discovered within app view components directory and resources views components directory. If we want to register manually, then we will be using component method within the boot method of app service provider. Like this we will be using blade :component within that package alert class. So this is the command which we can use to create in order to register a particular component within the boot method of app service provider. And also we will be having facade here, blade facade, illuminate, support, facades, blade. So like this we will be type hinting the blade facade in order to use component method. Blade component within that package alert class. Like this we will be registering particular component. So once we register a component by making use of component method, we will be using that component name within the directory called x- that component name. Previously we have created package alert. Now we are using that package alert here like x- package alert directory. So like this we will be using the x- package name directive in order to make use of registered component. So alternatively we may use component namespace method in order to auto load component classes. So in order to load all the component classes, we will be using component namespace method. So this will be defined in the boot method of app service provider. Rendering components. We have already seen how to display a component. So x hyphen the package name, whatever we have created, the component name. X hyphen component name, x hyphen alert, x hyphen user profile. Like this, we will be rendering the components after registering the components within the boot method of app service provider. If you would like to render component conditionally, we will be using should render method. So should render method will have return type boolean. So based on true or false here, for example, we will be having boolean type and we will be declaring as a return type. So should render bool. So like this, it will be having the should render method. Passing data to components. So how do we pass data to a particular component in Laravel Blade templates? So by making use of colon character as a prefix, so we will be passing data to the components. And also we will be passing data by making use of render method. So in the view components dot alert. So we will be passing the data to the views. Casing. So we can use camel case, kebab case for the component constructor arguments in Laravel. So within that construct underscore construct method, public string alert type, for example, we will be mentioning this camel case alert type. A is a small letter, T is a capital. So alert type. So like this we will be mentioning the casing. Alert type argument may be provided to the component like x hyphen alert. Within that alert type equal to whatever the alert type. For example, if it is a danger, if it is a success, like this we will be mentioning the alert type. So like this we will be using the casing. Casing means camel case or kebab case, like that. Short attribute syntax. So we have already seen the colon syntax in order to pass the data to the components. So colon user hyphen id equal to $user id. So like this we will be using the short attribute syntax in order to pass the data to the components. Escaping attribute rendering. So by making use of double colon prefix to inform Blade that attribute is not a PHP expression. It is not a PHP expression. So in order to convey that, so we will be using that double colon symbol, that is a double colon prefix. For example, x hyphen button double colon class is equal to danger is deleting. So like this we will be using the double colon prefix in order to inform Blade that attribute is not a PHP expression. Component methods. We will be having is selected method, and which we can use this method to public variables being available to our component template. Accessing attributes and slots within the component class. So we can access when a render method returns as a closure, then only we will access attributes and slots within the component classes. So render method will have return type will be closure as a return type. Public function render method colon closure. Within that return function, it will return a complete function, and where it will have the return statement. Function will return div components content. So like this it will be having the complete function. So it will return a complete function. Then we can access the attributes and slots within the component classes. Additional components. We can mention if any service component is, for example, app services alert creator. So we will be mentioning that one within the constructor. public alert creator, dollar creator, public string, dollar type, public string, dollar message. So like this we will be having the, we will be mentioning additional dependencies. Hiding attributes or methods. Suppose if I want to hide particular attributes or methods from executing, so then we will be mentioning $except equal to type. So like this we will be using $except property in order to hide particular attribute or method. Component attributes. So we will be using colon symbol in order to pass data to components we have already seen. So that is component attributes. Within that, colon message is equal to $message. We will be mentioning as a variable. So within that we will be passing the data to the component variables. Default or merged attributes. So we can merge the attributes by making use of merge method. Conditionally merging classes. We will be using the class method. So by making use of class method, we can merge conditionally. Generally, we will be using merge method to merge the attributes. To merge the attributes conditionally, we will be using the class method. So this is the difference between the merge and class directives. Non-class attribute merging. So we will be using merge method, so where we can merge non-class attributes. And we will be having different methods like filter methods for retrieving and filtering attributes, where starts with, and also where doesn't start with, where starts with. So has method, for example, attributes has of class, and has any. Get method, where we can retrieve a specific attributes value. So like this we will be having different methods, attribute methods, which are there available in Laravel. Filter method, where starts with method, where doesn't start with method, where starts with method, has method, has any method, and also get method. So like this we will be having the different methods in order to implement the attributes within the Laravel blade templates. And we are also having a few reserved keywords like data, render, resolve view, should render, view, with attributes, with name. So these are the few reserved keywords where we cannot use as a variables within the blade templates of Laravel. Slots. So slots will provide, in Laravel slots will provide, they will pass additional content to our component. For example, if I want to execute particular slot, if I want to display particular slot, within the double braces we will be mentioning $slot. So like this we will be displaying the slot. Scoped slots. So if I want to define scoped slot, we will be using the format alert method. So for the particular component I want to display a scoped slot, then $component object notation format alert. So like this we will be using the format alert method in order to define a particular scoped slot to a particular component. Slot attributes. So we have already seen x-slot heading, x-slot footer. So like this we will be mentioning the slot attributes in Laravel blade templates. Inline component views. So we will be using a string. For example, if I want to return a string type of blade. So the string, and for the rendered method we will be using it as a return type. Public function render method colon the return type as a string. Then we will be returning that blade directive, whatever they want to return. And generating inline view components. So PHP artisan make component alert -inline. So we will be using the inline option. We will be providing inline -inline option to a particular artisan command whenever we create a particular component, to create a component that renders an inline view. So dynamic components. We will be making use of dynamic-component command in order to render dynamic components. So x-dynamic-component space colon component equal to that component name. So like this we will be rendering the components dynamically. Manually registering components. So we have already seen, so by making use of component method we will be registering the components within the boot method of app service provider. And auto loading package components by making use of component namespace. This also we have already seen. So blade :component namespace. So it will load all the component classes. So like this we have different methods in Laravel. So anonymous components. I want to render anonymous components. Then x-alert, x-inputs.button. So if I want to render sub-component, x-inputs.button, where we will be having the button component within the folder called resources, views, components, inputs, button.blade.php. So for that we will be rendering as a x-inputs.button. Here inputs is the folder name, button is the file name, button.blade.php. Anonymous index components. x-accordion.item. So if this is that, if I want to access anonymous index components, we will be using this syntax. Like resources, views, components, accordion.blade.php. So we will be using the syntax called x-accordion. So like this, we will make use of anonymous components in Laravel. Data properties or attributes. There is a attribute bag, will be the components attribute bag, where it will contain all the set of attributes. So @props directive will be used in order to display particular properties or attributes. Accessing parent data. So we will be using x-menu.item. So like this we will be making use of directive syntax in order to access parent data. We will be using @aware directive in order to access a particular parent's data. So @color gray. So we want to access, if we want to access a parent's data, we will be making use of @aware directive. Anonymous component path. So if I want to access particular anonymous component path, we will be making use of anonymous component path method. Within the boot method, we will be defining this one. Like for the blade package, we will provide this anonymous component path method in order to access anonymous component path. blading layouts. So defining, in this we will be discussing about layouts using components. So first we define the layout component, and we will be calling that layout component, we will be rendering that layout component within the directory x layout name, x-layout. So layout means a small portion of view layer, x-layout. Within that at the rate of for each tasks as task, so we will be executing task within that. So like this we will be rendering the layout component. Class components, anonymous components, and this is the third one, layout component. So we are having the layout component definition like HTML document, like HTML header tag, body tag. So after defining that layout component, we will be rendering that layout component by making use of x-layout. And after that, layouts using template inheritance. So we can define these layouts by making use of @section, and if I want to show @show, @yield content. So these are the different directives that are used to define a particular layout. So we can extend a layout by making use of @extends blade directive. So for the yield directive, by making use of yield directive, so we can display content. So like this we will be having different directives in Laravel. Forms CSRF field, @CSRF directive. So we have already discussed about the CSRF protection. So it will generate a CSRF token. So we will be providing @CSRF directive in order to provide CSRF token for the HTTP requests. Method field, @method directive, where we can mention what kind of method we are using when we provide a CSRF token. So @method of put, delete. So like this we will be using the different directives in Laravel. @CSRF, @method. Validation errors. If I want to display errors in blade templates, then we will make use of @error directive. Stacks, we have already discussed about this push. If I want to display some script, JavaScript, then we will be make use of @push scripts, then within that script tag JavaScript code. So like this we will make use of stacks. We are also having prepend, @prepend. If I want to prepend some content onto the beginning of a stack, we will be using the @prepend of scripts. So like this we will be using the prepend directive in Laravel. Service injection. So if I want to include some service, if I want to type in some service in blade templates, then we will be make use of @inject. So inject directive we will be using the to include particular service, to type in particular service within the blade templates. Rendering inline blade templates, we will be using render method. So in order to render inline blade templates. Rendering blade fragments. For example, if we are using front-end frameworks like Turbo and HTMX. So in order to create blade templates, for example, if we are using these front-end frameworks, then only if we want to return only a portion of blade templates, then we will be using the @fragment directive in Laravel. So @fragment, then it will render only a portion of blade HTTP response. So if I want to conditionally display that portion of blade template, then we will be making use of fragment if. So these are the fragments and fragments if method. Fragment and fragment if method in order to render the portion of blade template in Laravel when if we use Turbo and HTMX front-end frameworks. And also two other methods called fragments and fragments if methods. These allow to return multiple view fragments in the response. So we can return the multiple fragments. Fragment method, fragments method. Fragment if method, fragments if method. So like this we have 4 different methods in Laravel in order to return the fragments as a response. Extending blade at the rate of directive method. By making use of directive method, not at the rate of, by making use of directive method within the boot method of app service provider, we can create custom directives in Laravel of blade templates. For example, blade directive. For the directive, we will be mentioning the custom directive name, date time, for example, function, string, expression. So like this, we will be making use of directive method. Custom echo handlers. Generally, by making use of magic method called __toString, we will be having echo handlers. If we want to create custom echo handlers, we will be making use of stringable method. So we will be providing a closure to that stringable method in order to create custom echo handlers. And if I want to create custom if statements, then we will be make use of if method within the boot method of app service provider. Blade if disk, and after that closure. So for example, if I want to use this disk as a custom if statement, then for example @disk of local, else disk s3, else end disk. So like this we will be having the disk directives. So like this we will be creating the custom if statements, like if else statements. So this is all about blade templates concept in Laravel. Thank you so much. This is your universal horse star Ravindar Reddy Yampalla. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of my fans, supporters and followers, and a special thanks to all of my YouTube subscribers. Thank you so much.